president said today that we're not going to be in a recession. Why is he so confident of that?
So if you look at the economic indicators, as the president was laying out, if you look at the labor market, right now we are seeing historic unemployment. If you look at low unemployment at 3.6, if you look at the average amount of jobs that have been created, it's about 400 per month. Those indicators do not show that we are in a recession or even a pre-recession. There is the NBER, the National Bureau of Economic Research, that actually I've talked about before, and they look at a broad range of data in deciding whether or not there is a recession. And most of the data that they look at right now continues to be strong. Those pieces that I just mentioned. If you look at consumers and how they're spending, if you look at what businesses and their households are investing, you can continue to see resilience, and it's consistent with a recession. And even if you look at the state unemployment numbers that we saw last week in 21 states, we saw that unemployment numbers was at 3% or below. And so all of those indicators show us that we're not in a recession or in a pre-recession at this time.
Confident is that assessment, I guess? Is the president leaving it open for the possibility, or is he adamant that there's not going to be a recession?
Well, I mean, it's not our definition, right? We're talking about a definition from NBER, which has been around since 1920, which has said back, I give you some quotes here. In 2007, the San Francisco Federal Reserve said, journalists often describe a recession as 2 consecutive quarters of declines in quarterly real inflation-adjusted gross domestic product, GDP. The definition used by economists differs. And so, again, NBER, they decide what the definition is. And so when you look at the economic indicators, you do not see the job growth, the strong labor market that we're seeing currently in a recession.
Just following up on what you said about the National Bureau of Economic Research, they also did not declare it a recession in 2008 until December. That's 12 months after the recession had already been in place in the U.S. economy. But based on what the president said earlier, have his economic advisors told him they also don't think a recession is likely? And what is exactly the White House's definition of a recession?
Again, I'm not going to define it from here. I'm just going to leave it to the NBER, as we have stated, of how they define recession.
Okay, so you won't declare it one until they have declared it one.
I'm just saying that we're just not going to define it. We use the indicators that the NBER, the National Bureau of Economic Research, have used. We've mentioned that a few times. But going to your question about how sometimes it's late, look, I think the point that we're trying to make here is that we have a strong labor market, which you don't normally see in a recession. That is very uncommon to see that. When you see an average of 400,000 jobs created per month, when you see an unemployment at 3.6, which is historical, that does not define a recession. And so that's what we point you to. That's what we're looking at, as how the economy is currently in this moment. And the reason why is because of the work that this president has done, because of the American Rescue Plan and turning back on an economy that was in crisis when he walked in, when 20 million people were collecting unemployment benefit insurance, and now we have historic job creation. And so that is important. And let's not forget about the bipartisan infrastructure law that as well that has helped create jobs.
Okay, I just want to be clear though. So we're not going to hear the White House say if there is a recession that there is one until the National Bureau of Economic Research has declared it one?
What I'm saying is that the definition, that the technical definition, and Secretary Yellen said this yesterday on Meet the Press, is the National Bureau of Economic Research that looks at a broad range of data in deciding whether or not there is a recession, and most of that data they look at right now continues to be strong. So that's who we look at. I'm not going to get into a hypothetical right now. We don't do that, but we're using that as clearly an indicator, and why, and they lay out how they get to that definition.
Okay.
The recession thing, and not to belabor the point, but you made it. You said that journalists use the phrase technical recession. I mean, I have notes from the last few days from Deutsche Bank, Morgan Stanley, Wells Fargo, Citigroup, and Fitch, all using that phrase. Those aren't, rabble-rousing journalists. And so I'm wondering, is that simply a phrase we won't hear from the White House?
So,
On Thursday, this negative GDP, what will you call that?
So a top official, I'll give you one, a top official at Goldman Sachs recently said it would be historically unusual for the labor market to be as strong as it is at present, even at the very onset of a recession. What we are seeing, if you look at the indicators, if you look at which one of them is the strong labor market, if you look at where the unemployment is nationally and also in those 21 states that I just laid out, 3% or less, those are historic figures. Those are not what we would call a recession, just according to how it is defined. If you look at consumer spending, if you look at what businesses and households are investing in, you continue to see the resilience, and it is consistent. It is not consistent with a recession, and so that's what the indicators that we are looking at. And I will add, Brian Deese will be in the briefing room tomorrow, so you guys will all have an opportunity to ask these very same questions of him. He is as you all know, our National Economic Council. He's the director of the National Economic Council, so you'll have the opportunity to ask him these very same questions.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, guys. See you tomorrow.